way more freely than I like, but and it causes a lot of problems and sometimes death for people. So in the human system, things like Valium and opioids and pot and alcohol are all depressants. They depress the system. And so after years and years of using those drugs, I was incredibly depressed. I was suicidal and I was about to take my own life. I had enough pills to do the job. I knew that I could do it. I don't think I really wanted to die, but I didn't really know how to live any other way. I didn't know there was another choice. And one day somebody invited me to go to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. I didn't know anything about it, but I went, and that's when I began to understand that I was addicted to these substances and that there was actually something I could do about it, which was the hopeful thing. I would sit in meetings and I would sob and sob at the same time, feeling some hope that maybe there was something I could do about it. So, and that's actually where I met Xander. So he had 3 years clean and sober when I came in. I thought he was a god because he had 3 years more than I did. Yeah, we've been friends ever since. So, so going to those meetings, learning about addiction, and then making the decision that I wanted to work in the addiction field. I wanted to give back some of the amazing help that I had been given. So I started working in Vancouver's downtown east side, and I was there for 16 years at a clinic called Watari. It's an outpatient alcohol and drug counseling service. And then I went into private practice in 2007. And during the time I was at Watari, what started to happen was that my clients, the addicts and the alcoholics, their loved ones started to contact me saying, we are at the end of our rope. We don't know what to do. Help us. And I had no idea how to help them, but I listened. And I started seeing some patterns, and I started developing some strategies to be able to help them that worked. So I decided that I was going to dedicate my career to working with the families and the loved ones of addicts of any kind. You know, when I say addicts, when I say addiction, it can be anything. It can be alcohol and drugs, it can be gaming, gambling, porn, codependency, basically anything, chocolate, which is one of my addictions still. Yes, I'm very glad that I have worked all these years with the families, because there's just so little help for you guys out there. There's a little bit, but there's not much, and we certainly need more. And we're going to talk about today how one person's addiction, how one person affects so many other people. So we'll talk about that. I think really that's all that I need you to know for now. If you have a question about me or my background or anything like that, then just write it in the chat. You can ask it later. I want you to know that I really enjoy doing Q&A. So, you know, don't think that you're being a burden to me if you have a question. I prefer you ask it than that you don't ask it. So the other thing that I like to say in these webinars is that I'm so happy that on Zoom, I can have my notes. I can have them right here. They're in a Word document. And so you might be seeing me look down at my notes sometimes to just make sure that I know where I am. And so I'm going to actually do that right now. So I'm going to start by talking about why it's so hard to set boundaries, why people have such a hard time doing it. This kind of pattern, our behavioral patterns excuse me, in relationships, in romantic relationships and friendships and relationships with the addicts. These patterns form in childhood for most people. And for many of us who become loved ones of addicts, and I myself am also a loved one of addicts, various kinds, we learn in childhood that it's dangerous to speak our truth and to tell other people what we're really feeling. In some cases, there's violence that happens to us when, as children, we tell our truth. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's sexual. It can be very, very scary. There's emotional abandonment or neglect. If you say to a parent, for example, or somebody else that's taking care of you that you're not comfortable, you're not okay, and you try to set a boundary. And there are other kinds of punishments that happen as well. So children learn not to say what they really feel when they're uncomfortable. And this is what happens when we grow up. Now we're grown-ups. Well, chronologically anyway, we're grown-ups. And sometimes there's some really important inner work that needs to be done to be able to heal this, so that you really can be the person you want to be and not be so scared of saying to your addict or anybody else in your life, this is not okay. So it's time to shift our thinking around all of this. And what I'd like to suggest is that you be as gentle with yourself today as you can be, as we learn about boundaries, about the importance of them, and for you to, maybe feel uncomfortable as we're doing it. Some feelings might come up for you that you haven't felt for a long time, or that maybe you've never really allowed yourself to feel before. Just be gentle with yourself, because the fact that you're on this webinar today, I want to tell you how much I respect you for being here. This is not easy stuff to look at, but it's so important. So we're going to get started right now with that. I set up a system of setting boundaries, and I call it ABS, like ABS. And ABS stands for assertive boundary setting. I like to call it that because it's kind of like exercising the muscle, and for many people who are loved ones and who put their own needs on the back burner, sometimes they don't exercise their muscles, their abs, or anything else. Sometimes I used to tell people that I like to sit down until the urge to exercise passed, So I don't like exercise particularly. I do it now. I do it twice a week with the trainer. Yay! But it's not my favorite thing to do. And boundaries isn't my favorite thing to set either. But when I don't set it, it's not okay with me. I don't feel good about myself. So let's, even if this doesn't really feel like fun for you today to learn about boundary setting, just know that it can be very rewarding for you, for your family, and definitely for the addict that you love. And we'll talk about how that happens. So the ABS is a three-part system, the way I set it up. So the first part is, why should we set boundaries? The second part is, how do we set boundaries? And the third part is how to maintain a boundary once we've set it. So the first part, why set boundaries? Like I said, it's better for you. That's the first reason. It's better for you. And when I work with loved ones like yourselves, I'm much more interested in you than I am in your addict. And I'll explain what I mean. I mean, I work with addicts. Please understand, I work with them and we get some really wonderful results with them. But the problem is that there are many, many resources out there for people with addictions of all sorts, especially alcohol and drugs. There's not that much for you. And I know that many of you do put your needs on the back burner. And many of you do feel like doormats in your relationships with your addicts. You love them, but you allow them to take advantage of you. So one of the things I would wonder, and I would ask you about right now, is how you feel inside when I'm talking about setting boundaries. If you could raise your hand, how many of you feel kind of uncomfortable about this? Yeah, got a few. Okay, come on, tell the truth. Tell the truth, set a boundary. How do you feel? Yeah. So most of you are going to feel not so good about it. Not so, it's not the thing that you would like to do if you had your druthers about doing anything. And that's just fine. And the fact that you're here when you're not comfortable, that's fantastic. Because what happens for most of us when we think about setting a boundary, and it still happens for me too, is this fear of confrontation. We're so afraid of somebody getting angry with us, somebody getting frustrated or disappointed with us, somebody not liking what we say to them. And this is what we talked about last time with self-respect. So what I wanted to say, Xander, what I really wanted to say was that anybody who's in this webinar that wasn't in either the last one or the one before that, if you want the link to that, please email Xander and just let him know and he can send that to you.
Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to email the links to the last two webinars when I mail this link.
Wonderful.
And I need to call myself out as having slightly failed you on this webinar because you were midway through introducing yourself and giving your story when I remembered to turn on the recording.
Yes, I do that all the time.
So,
It's one of my favorite tricks is to forget to record when I'm supposed to.
so
Okay, well, so it is what it is.
5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, so we'll get that to you. So in terms of that fear of confrontation, the thing that we can counterbalance that with is self-respect. And again, if you'll get the link for last week, and for some of you, you were here on that webinar, and it'll be a good refresher for you anyway. But what I say, though, my in my opinion, sorry, I have a bit of a throat thing today. In my opinion, self-respect is the most important thing, capital THE, the most important thing that we either have or we don't have. I don't care how much money you have or how much property you own or any of that. Self-respect, without self-respect, much of that means nothing anyway. So I had quite a life in my addiction and way before that without self-respect. Did I say self-esteem? I meant self-respect, sorry. Without self-respect. I lived without self-respect for a really long time. And now I have developed my self-respect and it's just not negotiable anymore. There's no way that I'm giving it up. And the only way that it can be taken from me is if I allow that. So I really want to encourage you to be developing your self-respect. If you need any help with it, please let us know. It's about which way you want to go in life. Like, who do you want to be? Do you want to be a person who lies down and lets people walk all over them? Or do you want to be somebody who holds your head up high and says no when you mean no, even when it's scary? You are the only person that you can change. I mean, try as we might, we keep trying to change other people, but we are the only ones that we can change. And when I was thinking about this, I thought I'm gonna show you a cartoon that I love. I'm a lover of butterflies. Maybe you can see the one in the background, and then I've got another one on the wall here. I love butterflies, not just because they're beautiful, which they are, but I love butterflies because they start out as caterpillars crawling along the ground, and they have an instinct. The caterpillar has an instinct. The caterpillar knows that if it doesn't change, it's going to die. So it climbs up a tree, and it climbs on it crawls down a limb, and it creates a cocoon of bug juice, that it stays in. It creates this around itself, and it stays in this thing of bug juice for as long as it takes to make those changes. Basically, a caterpillar is changing almost its entire DNA. And then it comes out, as soon as it's ready, it comes out into this beautiful creature that doesn't look like a caterpillar, except in the middle. So I want to show you this cartoon. So this cartoon, it's a little hard to see, so I'm going to tell you what it's about. This cartoon is a butterfly driving a convertible, and she, I'll say, has been pulled over by the police. And the police is asking for a license and registration, that whole thing. So let's see if I can you see it? Can you see what he's looking at?
Yes.
He's looking at a photo of a caterpillar, and he's looking at the butterfly, and he looks at the caterpillar, he looks at the butterfly, he looks at the caterpillar, and the butterfly says, "It's an old photo." I love this cartoon. And that's how my life has gone. Because, my life before now, caterpillar, absolutely. So if I believe that every single person on this webinar, all of you, have butterfly potential. There's no question about it. I believe everybody in the world, no matter what, has butterfly potential. We just have to want it enough to do the work it takes to make the changes. So I'm glad you're here to make these changes. So boundaries are better for you. They increase your self-respect. They're better for your addict. I always like explaining this because I sometimes like to think of addicts. I know there's an addict or two on this webinar, and I mean no disrespect because I have been there myself. Addicts often act like 4-year-olds. I used to as well. And what we know today is that children, young children, feel much more secure when they know what the boundaries are, when they know what the limitations are, when they know what the expectations are, what's expected of them. Even if they hate it, even if they don't like the boundaries, they still feel more secure and actually more loved by their parents if they're given these expectations. This is what we expect of you, and we're doing it because we love you. When we enable an addict, when we don't set boundaries, we're enabling. And an enabled addict does not recover because there's no reason for them to. If you're going to do everything for an addict, why should they change anything? So enabling an addict, not having boundaries, is not ever, ever, ever a loving act. And a lot of people get confused about that. They think that giving in to somebody who wants, you know, give me $10, I need some money, or $20, or let me do this, I want to do this. And they say yes, 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 and they shouldn't be, and they know that inside. The addict knows they shouldn't be asking for it. The loved one knows they shouldn't be giving it to the addict. It's not a loving act to do this. You love the addicts in your life, even when you're so mad at them, even when you wish they would just go away. You love them, you want to see them get better. So you want to come from this place of love when you set your boundaries. It's not a punishment. It's because you love them, and it's because you're learning how to respect yourself. And this is really important. You don't want to validate bad behavior in anyone, and especially not in an addict that's acting like a 4-year-old. I don't know how many of you have seen my TEDx talk, but in the beginning, some of you might have seen lots of different videos and you're not sure which one I'm talking about. Beginning of the TEDx talk, I'm saying, let me in, let me in. I know you're in there, damn it, open the door. And it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're sound asleep, and you've just been awoken by the addict in your life or the alcoholic in your life who's probably drunk or stoned and banging on your door in the middle of the night. Now, it's up to you whether you want to let them in. I'm not going to say that that's a bad thing or a good thing, up to you. But what you don't want to do is let them in and bring them a cup of tea and a plate of cookies. And I hope you see the difference. If you're going to let them in, show them where they can sleep, and you go back to bed. Take care of yourself. Don't validate bad behavior. There's a child's toy that I know, I've seen it recently, so I know it's still around. It's kind of a blow-up plastic clown. And it's got 2 metal things on the bottom to hold it upright. And if a child comes and bashes into it, what happens is the clown goes down. And then the child backs up and the clown comes back up. And then the child bashes into it and the clown goes down. And then the clown comes back up for more. You don't want to be that clown, for the addict to bash into you and you roll over and then come back up for more. So please be careful of that. Many of you have been doing that because you haven't known what else to do. In the beginning of this, I talked about how one person's addiction can affect so many other people. And before COVID, when I used to give live talks, sometimes what I would do is I would bring up this concept of how many other people are affected by one person's addiction. And I'd ask the audience, name one person that's affected by somebody's addiction. Invariably, they'd say mother. Okay, so you come up here with me and you be the mother. And then who else is affected? Father. So you come on up and you be the father. Who else is affected? Well, there's brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents and bosses and teachers and friends and fellow students and colleagues, and on and on and on it goes. There are doctors, there are therapists, there are so many people who are affected by one person's addiction. It's astonishing. And I had one time when I was doing this and they said the family dog. So I had somebody come up and be the dog, you know, because yeah, there's an instinct in animals and they get affected by this. So when you start to set boundaries with the addict, the ripple effect is that the other people who are affected by this, it's better for them. It's so much better for them. Oh yeah, I forgot the neighbors and the police who have to deal with the addict sometimes. Lots and lots and lots. There's like 10, 20, 30 people who are affected by one person's addiction. So you want to be able to have these boundaries so that everybody can benefit from that, not just you, not just the addict. Of course, that's the most important piece, but there are so many more. Here's the deal. It's never too late to start setting boundaries, even if you haven't been, even if you've had years and years and years of not setting boundaries. As long as somebody is still alive, it's never too late to change the relationship. So please don't give up. So that's the why we set boundaries. So we get into an interesting place of how to set boundaries. Because I have people saying to me, well, I don't know how to set a boundary. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And yeah, you don't, because nobody's ever told you. So I'm going to tell you today how to set boundaries. And this is a 3-part process too, how to set boundaries. The first one is that you need to be able to identify your boundaries. And what I want you to understand is that even in an identical situation, if I was in an identical situation as you are, my boundary might be different from yours. And that's really okay, because we're different people. So it's okay that we have different boundaries. You need to know what yours are. And if you need help identifying your boundaries, that's what we're here for. We will help you identify your boundaries, but it's really those answers are inside you. So what are your boundaries? The next thing you need to do is learn how to language your boundaries. People say to me, well, what do I say? How do I say it? I'm going to tell you today. The basic way you do it, the basic way you language a boundary is simply and clearly. And you also need to deal with the pushback that you're going to get from the addict. And you do that with firmness and repetition. And I'm going to talk about all of these things just a little bit more in a moment. I'm going to teach you something that's called the assertiveness formula. And I know that some of you are taking notes and some of you might want to write this down. You will get the recording, so you don't have to write it down if you don't want to. But for those who do, I'm gonna tell it to you slowly so you can do that. The assertive formula is simple. It's really simple. It's not always easy, but it's really simple. We need to remember that we're people pleasers, kind of by nature. We want other people to feel okay, and we've been practicing people pleasing and codependency for a very long time, so be gentle with yourself around this. You're learning something new. It's like the baby that's learning how to, get up on its legs and walk around. You're going to fall down, go boom sometimes. It's okay. The fact that you're doing this at all is awesome. And for some of you, you're going to need to toughen up a little bit. You're going to need to toughen up inside and maybe understand what's been getting in your way of doing that. So Xander mentioned my books, and I want to tell you that the workbook that goes along with the book is a really good way. It's got a lot of questions and things for you to, exercises for you to do and questions for you to answer to help you understand yourself better. And once you understand yourself better, it's going to be easier for you to be real and authentic with your addict and everybody else in your life. So I just wanted to point that out to you. So we have 3 basic ways of behaving or relating One is assertive. Sorry, we'll start with aggressive. One is aggressive, and we all know what aggressive is. It's what, rage, and addicts can get into rages, and it's horrible. We hate it. Rage, aggression, yelling, screaming, punching holes in walls, sometimes pushing people physically and hurting them. That's aggressive. Then on the other end of that scale is passive. That's where a lot of you are right now. You're passive. You're not really sure, what to say or what to do or whether it's okay, and are you worth it, or is it okay? That's passive. In the middle, a dichotomy is passive and aggressive, night, day, black, white. That's a dichotomy. And in the middle of a dichotomy, that's always the healthiest point to be. So the healthiest point to be is assertive. Assertiveness is when you talk about yourself with I statements, Instead of saying, you make me so angry, you do this, you do that. That's aggressive on your part. Assertive statements are things like this. I feel, I know, I believe, I understand, I think, I need, I want, I statements. So you want to be able to phrase your boundaries with I statements and be assertive. So here's the assertiveness formula. If you're writing it down, this is how I want you to write it. I feel, and then a blank. And under the blank in brackets and parentheses, I want you to put emotion. So I feel blank when you blank, and under that blank in brackets, I want you to put behavior. So I feel when you, because blank, and then under that one, I want you to put reason, put the word reason. And what I'd like to see, or what I need is, what I'd like to see or what I need is blank. And underneath that blank, you put in brackets, best possible outcome. So let's just look at this for a minute. I feel annoyed, an emotion word. What you don't want to do is say, I feel like you do this. I feel like you, keep the like out of there, because the like brings you back into your head instead of staying in your emotions. I feel angry, sad, worried, concerned, irritated, happy, encouraged, empowered. I feel some kind of emotion when you, and then you want to explain the behavior. So, and you want to keep it simple. So I feel annoyed when you come in at 2 o'clock in the morning into my home and you make a lot of noise and you wake everybody else up. Because that's very disrespectful of you to do. You're living in our house and we need our sleep. The reason that I put reason in there is because people like to say, especially addicts like to say, oh, don't feel that way. You don't have to feel that way. Don't feel that way. That's silly to feel that way. No, it's not. This is the reason that I feel this way. So I'm telling you what the reason is. And what I'd like to see, or what I need, is for you to be back in the house by 11 on weeknights, or not come home at all, or find someplace else to live, or something like that. What I need to see, what I need is, what I'd like is the best possible outcome. So the way it goes is you say to the person, I feel annoyed when you come home at all hours and you're waking us up and from sound sleep, because this is our home. It's disrespectful that you do this, and we need our sleep. It's not okay. And what I'd like to see, or what I need to see, is that you come home, you respect our rules in the house, and you come home by 11 on weeknights, and we'll talk about the weekends another time, but you respect our boundary for the time, or maybe we might want to look at you living somewhere else. So that's the boundary. And once you've got that written down and you've got it the way you want it to be, you practice it. You practice it, and then you practice it, and you practice it. And in what I like to call a non-charged moment, which means that there isn't an argument already happening, and the addict you love isn't drunk and isn't high, because you don't want to talk to the drugs, you don't want to talk to the alcohol, you want to talk to the person. You pick your time. In a non-charged moment, you say to your addict, come and sit down with me. I have something I'd like to talk to you about. And you set your boundary. That's how to set the boundary. But the next part, this is the fun part. The next part is about how to maintain that boundary, because the addict's going to have some pushback for you. There's a saying that no is an addict's least favorite word. And you're going to have to learn how to say no to an addict who doesn't want to hear it. And again, if you need help with that, that's what we're here for. This is what we help so many families learn how to do, and do very well with a lot of success. To not set a boundary is to prepare somebody for a world that doesn't exist out there, because this is a world full of boundaries. To not set a boundary creates a sense of entitlement in the person. So they expect to get what they want. And when they go out in the world, they expect to get what they want. So they show up to work drunk, they get fired, and they think, how could that have happened? That bastard fired me. Entitlement. This is what you need to know. Do not set a boundary that you're not prepared to maintain. Don't do that. If you're not ready to maintain it, then let's work on it some more. Let's work on you some more until you feel ready to maintain it. You're going to state it, you're going to language it, you know what it is, and you mean it. And you're acting like you mean it. You need to mean business. Because I'll tell you just a little story about me in my other lifetime. Many years ago, I was a teacher in public school. And I taught for about 10 years in junior and secondary school. I taught English and I taught drama. So the kids that I had to kick out of English class because they were behavior problems were the ones I had in drama, and they were fantastic. But I learned gradually that at the beginning of the school year, it's much easier if you start out if I started out as the bitch and then gradually eased up. It was a lot easier to keep control of my class than if I started out, eased up, and then had to be a disciplinarian. Didn't work. So you want to set your boundaries. You want to be very clear and mean business. And then, you know, sometimes every once in a while, you can have a little bit of latitude if you want to, up to you, but you've already prepared your addict for you being different. And that's very important. Yeah, here's another thing. This is participatory, so I hope that you'll participate with me. There's a place on your chest. It's right about here. Can you see where I'm poking? Right about here? I'd like you all to poke yourself right there. Right now, poke yourself right there. If it doesn't hurt, find the place that hurts, because there's going to be a place on your chest that hurts when you poke. Keep poking, keep poking, keep poking. Even if it hurts, keep poking. Okay, you can stop now. This is an addict's job. An addict, I'm talking about an addict in active addiction, not somebody in recovery, although sometimes in very early recovery it can happen as well. But an addict's job is to poke at you until you cave, because they want what they want. They're going to find a way to get it, and they'll just keep poking at you until you cave and give them what they want. So your job is to be able to withstand that and even say to them, you know what, it's not okay that you do this. You need to stop doing this. I'm much less likely to give you anything if you keep doing this. Did you notice the I statement? I. So this is kind of really an addict's job. And if you are somebody who has been caving for a long time, you kind of set a boundary a little bit, maybe just a little bit, and then they don't like it and they get mad, and so you change things around and you give them what they want. And if you've been that person, and trust me, a lot of loved ones are until they learn how to do this. I was too. If you've been a caver, then you're going to have even sturdier boundaries until the addict gets used to the new, improved, self-respecting you. You need to set boundaries from a place of love. You need to make sure that it's not a punishment. You try really hard not to set a boundary in a state of anger. Get out of my house, I never want to see you again. You want to try not to do that kind of thing. Because it's not about punishing this person that you love so much. It's about helping them learn how to change something that's very destructive for themselves as well as everybody around them. Again, you want to set the boundaries in non-charged moments as much as possible. And if you make a mistake, and if you say, get out of my house, I hate you, you know, go away, then you can apologize for that later. You can make an amend if you do that, but try not to do that very much, because it's very damaging to the relationship that you have with that person. There's something called a broken record. And for those of you who have raised children, you know that sometimes these addicts do act like 4-year-olds. And when you set a boundary with a 4-year-old, often they don't hear you set the boundary. They're off to the next shiny thing, right? Or they don't want to hear you. No, 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 I'm not going to hear you. I'm not going to hear you. Or they don't take you seriously because you're not setting your boundary in a way that's appropriate and that makes sense to them. So sometimes we have to just repeat our boundaries for a little bit until the addict takes it seriously. A broken record technique is not a bad thing, but you don't want to do that for too long because they won't hear that if you do it. Sometimes you'll have to set a different boundary after that. An example of setting it with a 4-year-old is I want you to go pick up your toys and put them in your room. And the 4-year-old says, no, I'm not going to do that. No, Make me. I'm not going to do that. Because that's what 4-year-olds do. They poke at you too. And so what you do is you give a 4-year-old a choice. You either put your toys away right now, or if you're going to be disrespectful, you're not going to be able to, I don't know, have ice cream with us after dinner and watch TV with us. You're not going to be able to do that if you don't put your toys away right now. So you go into your room and you think about that and make a decision. So the 4-year-old goes into his room and her into his room and thinks about that and thinks, oh, no ice cream, no TV. Oh, I don't want that. So they start picking up their toys. And that's the same way that you do it with an addict. If you're not going to follow the rules of the house, then we have to talk about that. We're going to have to see what, maybe you don't live here. Even in COVID, maybe you don't live here. If you're married to somebody or you're a partner of somebody and they're not treating you respectfully and they keep treating you disrespectfully, then you might want to say to them, if this doesn't change, then I may not, you can use hesitant language, I may not choose to stay in this relationship because I'm feeling better about me and I don't deserve this and I don't want this. So if you're going to keep drinking, if you're going to keep using drugs, if you're going to keep using my money in my bank account to buy your drugs, whatever your situation is, we can help you language your boundaries and identify your boundaries. But whether you're the parent of an adult child who's an addict or you're the partner of somebody, the same basic things apply to setting boundaries and maintaining them. Another thing to look at is leverage. Leverage is so important. And you all have leverage with the addict that you love. It may be, okay, before I go there, what we're wanting to do is make it uncomfortable because we love the addict and we want the addict to get better. We want to make it uncomfortable for them to continue in their addiction. That's the goal of all of this. And to be treated with respect, but we want to make it uncomfortable for them to stay in their addiction. We don't want them in their addiction. And on some level, they don't want to be there either. So they're kind of hoping that you'll help them out. So what's your leverage? Is your leverage maybe money? Are you the one that's paying the rent or the mortgage of the place that they live in? Are you buying the food and paying for utilities so they can have a nice hot shower? All right, maybe your leverage is a place to stay. Like you can't stay here if you're going to disrespect our house. That's just not going to happen anymore. And if you don't believe me, just watch me. You're not going to be here. So it might be a place to stay. It may be that you leave the relationship. If it's a partnership, you may leave. If you don't want to leave, we can help you around that too. But there may be a boundary around this, because if somebody continually disrespects you in what's supposed to be a loving partnership, you might want to take a look at that. Right? Somebody needs to be in control of this situation, and you don't want it to be the addict. For many of you, most of you here today, it's probably been the addict for a really long time. And you don't want to continue that, because here are the things to remember. Number one, you've heard me say it, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And the other way to say that is that if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. So if you let the addict rule the roost, things will never change for you. I promise you, it'll never change until, if it's a substance abusing addict, until that person dies, because addiction just keeps getting worse and worse. It doesn't just get better on its own. So again, reach out for help. We are here to help you. We will hold your hand through this whole process. You don't have to be alone with this anymore. Enabling an addict is not a loving act. Never, ever, ever. It keeps the addict in the addiction, and that's not loving for the addict. Don't enable your addict anymore. And set boundaries because you love them, not because you're trying to punish them, but because you love them and because you respect yourself. So, in conclusion, I want to tell you a little story. This was this was a commercial that used to be on TV. Some of you might remember it. I think it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago that it was on TV. I haven't seen it in a long time. And I think it was a Kraft cheese commercial or something. So you had a set of quite elderly parents, maybe in their 80s, and they were in the living room with their adult children, who it seemed like their adult children lived there in the house with them, and they were like 50 years old, which is what happens if you don't set boundaries. So the mother, the older woman, gets up and kind of waddles to the kitchen slowly, and she says to the family, "Dinner's ready, come to the table." So they all come to the table, they sit down. She comes waddling out of the kitchen with a big plate of food. And even though she's small and frail and old, they're all sitting down, she's carrying this plate of food, and she ladles the food, spoons the food onto everybody's plates before she sits down to eat herself. And you can just kind of see the codependency in this, I hope. And the husband and the wife, they look at each other, they're rolling their eyes like, how do we get rid of these kids? And then the voiceover for the commercial says, "Stop cooking with cheese." That was the tagline. Stop cooking with cheese. If you stop cooking with cheese, your children won't want to be at home anymore. So I implore you, stop cooking with cheese. In whatever way you're cooking with cheese, stop it. And learn how to do it differently so that you can have the life you want, feel good about yourself, and your addict can actually recover. And that's the end of the presentation part.
Wonderful. Thank you, Candace. I've been getting some comments from people who are saying that this has been very helpful, that this is good content. And so before we go into the full Q&A part, and because I didn't start the recording right at the start of the webinar, I'm going to use just a moment or two to let you all know, and for those people who came in a little bit after the introduction, is that if you're interested in working with us in any way, shape, or form, then please send an email to care-team@lovewithboundaries.com, or go to our website, lovewithboundaries.com, and on that page, you will be able to book a free, no obligation consultation, where for 30 minutes, usually on the phone, but possible on Zoom, we will meet and discuss how and explore how we, the Love with Boundaries team, which there's 5 of us who are therapists in addition to Candace. We've all been trained by Candace in how to work using her techniques that have been proven to be very successful with families and helping families to come out of their pain of addiction themselves, regardless of what their addict does, and in many cases to help the addict also come out of the pain of their addiction. So I will send the link to the questionnaire where you can fill in the questionnaire and that again, and then get access to a 30-minute consultation with us. I will send that with the recording for this webinar. So at this point, Candace, you wanted to share what the new book looks like.
Yeah, because I showed you the other two, but I haven't shown you the last one. So my new book, I'm so happy with it and proud of it, and I really just want to show it to you. Unfortunately, on Amazon, we don't have the search inside the book thing that they have on many books there. It takes about 10 days to get that onto the book, and it's just gone up on Amazon this past week, so it's going to be a few more days. So I just wanted to show it to you. So it's called, so some of you get my Self-Respect Sunday pieces every week, yeah. So this is called Self-Respect Sunday for Your Soul If You Love an Addict, and it's a weekly journal. So it's hard for me to know if you can see. So when I'm holding it up, I want you to let me know if you can't.
I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. So there are the same kind of images that you get with Self-Respect Sunday.
Bring it a little bit more to your right. Not so close to the screen, the camera. Not so close.
Okay.
Not so close. Back
And then
away from the camera. There.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and then it has quotes from my first book, Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself, on each of them. And last week I shared my favorite one, so I'm going to try to find a different one. Yeah, here we go. This is the image. And what it says is, my definition of codependency is a simple one. Codependency occurs when we put other people's needs ahead of our own on a fairly consistent basis, going to any lengths to avoid unpleasant conflict with others. So this is about how to really, again, grow and develop your self-esteem, your self-respect. I keep saying self-esteem, and I mean self-respect, they're different. To be able to develop your self-respect and to have some quotes that you can reflect on, that you can use every day, you can use once a week. There are journaling pages for you to write on that have, guess what, butterflies on them, of course. And if any of you would like to go and see it on Amazon and maybe write a review, I think a couple of you already have. You know who you are. Thank you so much for doing that. That would be really awesome if you'd like to do that. So you just need to look up my name, and you'll see my books there.
I'm actually sending the link to.
Oh, you'll send the link.
Yes, both to the Amazon.ca and the Amazon.com. Place
Okay.
where you can see the book and order it.
Wonderful.
Great.
We should call you Link Man or something.
Well.
Link Man.
Okay. So I have one question that somebody has submitted through the chat, and here it is. I have in the past not set boundaries for my son because I was trying to help him get sober, and I thought me helping him and being with him regularly would do the trick. Now, out of anger, I have set boundaries and I no longer hear from him on a regular basis. Where is the line? It seems to be one or the other, all or nothing. And not knowing if he is okay or alive now is killing me.
Yeah. So the question is, where is the line? And yeah. So this is a very difficult situation, you know, whether we have the addicts in our lives all the time, sucking at us kind of, or we don't know where they are. either one. And again, you know, I was talking about dichotomies, right, wrong, black, white, night, day, and the healthy place is in the middle. So you're talking about all or nothing. We need to find a middle ground for that. It sounds like you've got some kind of way to get in touch with him. I'm assuming. It sounded like that in the way the question was phrased. So one of the things that we work with loved ones to do is to make amends when they're necessary. And, you know, especially with parents, like what adult child wouldn't love to hear an amend from a parent? And I know I would have liked to hear some from mine, and it can be very helpful. Again, it needs to be worded well. It needs to be, it's not just, I'm so sorry, it's my fault. I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to take responsibility for anything that isn't yours. But if there's something that you've done, like setting boundaries out of anger, for example, an amend, an apology can be made for that. And the relationship can start to be a little bit more mended. But as the relationship is mended, boundaries need to be in place. So if you're going to make amends, if you're going to try to mend a relationship with an addict, at the same time, you need to make sure you have your boundaries identified, you know how to language them. You're kind of starting all over by doing that. So we don't want you in an all or nothing place. I don't want you to be in an all or nothing place. I want you to have contact with the addict you love in a different way than you have been. And, you know, I can't give you an answer today. I'm not sure who's asking the question. I don't know your situation. I can't give you an answer of exactly how to do that, but this is what we work with people on, is we get to know your situation and then we work from that place. What we do is not cookie cutter. It's all about addiction, but every story, even though it has similarity to us. So I hope that's helpful.
Okay, well, thank you, Candace. And at this point, I'd like to open the floor, so to speak, to anybody who'd like to ask Candace a question. And so I see Marie has her hand up. So Marie, would you care to unmute yourself and address Candace? And then I see that there are at least one other person with their hand up, and I'll get to you as well.
Okay, and also, Xander, there's somebody who, Sue, emailed a question. I haven't seen that. Do you have that question, Xander?
I'll go and take a look.
Can you check? Okay. Yep. If we don't have it, Sue, then maybe you can ask it here today. Yeah.
Or you can put it in the chat, Sue.
Hmm.
So Marie, can you unmute yourself,
Marie.
please? Usually you unmute yourself in the lower left corner.
And click on the microphone icon.
Yep. And it
usually says can't hear you.
Mute or unmute, because at this point we can't hear you. Okay. Then not hearing from Marie at this moment, then I'll ask Christine if you'd care to unmute and ask your question.
Oh, and we're getting a message from Marie in the chat.
I put my hand very early. My question has been answered. Awesome.
Okay.
And, okay. So
thanks, Marie. Thanks for letting us know. Great.
And
Christine, can you unmute yourself? Technology, you know, can't live with it, can't live without it.
This is Definitely. O that I just was speaking with before the webinar. So I'm asking you to unmute.
Good.
Yeah, I actually did not have a particular question. I'm sorry for any confusion.
Okay. Hi, Christine.
Hello.
So there's nothing that you want to ask right now?
No, not right now. I don't have a particular question.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I will ask, is there anybody else who would like to ask a question about anything that has been discussed during the presentation? Or it can be very particular about your situation or not. So
Okay.
Who's that?
It looks like Leslie.
Yes.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi. I didn't hear the first part of the webinar because I was at a doctor's appointment.
Okay.
But I guess what I'm wondering about is I would say I have two addicts in my life. One is an adult and one is a youth. And what I'm wondering is sometimes is it better to wait for that person to reach out to me? And like how much reaching out to them should I be doing? Because I don't want to enable, but I still want to have a relationship and or check in on some level. So I just don't know what is the right way or the right amount or what have you.
Can you, and you don't have to be on this webinar, but I'll just ask, do you want to be a little bit more specific about maybe the person who you're not in contact with and what that situation is? Or?
Yeah, I'm in contact with both of them.
Okay.
But sometimes I just don't hear from them, like a period of time goes by. Mm-hmm. And then I wonder if they're okay or not. And I wonder, should I just leave it and wait for them to reach out if, you know, a day or two or three have gone by? Mm-hmm. Because I want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there isn't always a right thing in every situation, first of all. So, you know, this is a really hard one for people with codependency because I'm a recovering codependent, just so you know. I don't do it very much anymore, but every once in a while I fall back into it and it feels really icky when I do. But, you know, we want to give and we want to give and we want to make sure everybody's okay. And the way that I would determine that for myself today is if I'm reaching out, if I'm always the one reaching out, or most of the time being the one reaching out, there's something I need to look at with that. Because it's not a respectful balance.
No, and I would say with the adult, that's not what's happening at all. It is balanced. And usually actually they're reaching out to me more than I am to them. Mm-hmm. Because I'm somewhat aware of this situation, so maybe sometimes guarded. Okay. And the other one that is a minor, I'm always reaching out, and mm-hmm. they're not, which is okay because they're a youth, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, again, so not knowing the full situation, it's kind of hard for me to tell you exactly what to do. But if somebody is a minor and they're out there, if they're out there in the world and they might be in danger, or, you know, if they're on the street or there's something like that going on and you have an opportunity to connect with them, then if it were me, I'm not saying if I were you, but I'm saying if it were me, I would probably be reaching out to a minor. That's a different that's a different situation, but I would want to know. So if you're working with a counselor, if you're working with somebody, then mm-hmm. That would be a really good situation to bring up with them. Yeah. Because they would get to know what's really going on in that situation for you.
I
And
know where the person is, the
okay,
minor. So I
okay,
know that they're not on the street.
okay.
It's just the lack of connection, and I just
Yeah.
not sure how to
Yeah,
handle it.
well, that's kind of part of being a teenager too, right? So, but you know, if they're a teenager and they're a drug addict, then you've got a different situation. If they're just a
Yeah.
teenager and they're behaving like that, then it's kind of like, yeah, that's right. But if there's more going on, then there may
Mhm.
be some help that we can get for that person too, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe discuss that with somebody who's helping you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Leslie. And then they have another question. How can I suggest to my in-laws that they review this webinar? I feel
Sorry, say the rest of it, Xander.
I feel like they need it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure they do need it. Yeah. In-laws can be tricky characters because sometimes, you know, what's really hard in a family is when other family members are not on the same page with you. You're really trying to help in the best possible ways, like to not enable, but to help, and somebody else is enabling. And so the addict continues to be enabled, basically, because they know who to go to for that. One of the things that you can do is, so I'm assuming that their adult child is the addict. I'm making that assumption. If you would like to have the PDF version of my book, it's a link, and you can send it to somebody else. Then just email us, and we'll get that to you. So you can send it to them, and you can see whether they'll. If they won't. But I think there are some ways to try to do that, and maybe having a conversation in a non-charged moment, maybe trying to explain some of the things that you've heard in this webinar or in other webinars that, you know, if you've been on the other two, maybe, you know, trying to explain to them what we're trying to do here is help this person come out of addiction. And that's because we love them so much. And if we can help them see those kinds of things, there may be more hope than trying to say, you have to stop enabling them. You know, that usually doesn't work. But I'm really happy to send you the PDF of it that you can send to them. And maybe you can even say to them, look, you know, can you read a little bit of this, and then let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's have a discussion about it, because I've read it and I think it's good and might help you and might help your son. And yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
I wish there would, you know, if I ruled the world, then, you know, we'd be able to control each other. No, probably not. But we are not able to control each other. So we do the best we can with that.
Okay, well, yeah. In the end, if the loved one is so entrenched in their addiction and they're leaving you, how long does it take the family member left behind? How long does it take them to do can they expect to do their own personal grief work and recover from that?
Oh, yeah, that depends. I'm kind of aware of myself today saying to several of you, I can't really give you a full answer because I don't know your full situation. But again, you know, I don't know what's happening in your family in terms of what the addict's been doing, how long they've been gone, what is the grief that you're feeling, what's happening for you. It depends. It's never too late to start, and my suggestion is that you start as soon as you possibly can so that you can move through it. I was saying to somebody the other day, I wrote an article about this a long time ago, and I just love this saying that if you're going through hell, keep going. Like, don't get stuck in hell. If you're going through hell, keep going. So if you're in a grieving place, if you've got some work to do on yourself, let's do it. Let's get it done. Because there is an end in sight, but you can't see the end if you don't start doing the work. So if nothing changes, nothing changes, right?
Right.
And I'm absolutely loving Jeannie's hat. Jeannie,
Yes,
for those of you, if you can't see Jeannie, she's wearing a Santa hat. Looks really cute. But so, I mean, I hope that helps. I know it might not be so helpful, but the thing is that it depends on the person. It depends on the grief. It depends on what's going on, but do it, because otherwise you just stay stuck in hell.
Candace, we're getting really close to the end here. We do have time for at least one, if not two more questions.
Great.
Is there anybody else who has a question that you'd like to ask Candace at this point?
Have we heard Sue's question yet?
I have not received Sue's question.
Sue, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question? Where did she go? Which page is Sue on?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
My question is, are boundaries the same as rules?
It's the same rule.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say, oh, here I am being ambiguous again. I would say yes and no. I would say maybe. Boundaries are expectations. And sometimes expectations can be different than rules, and sometimes they're the same. So again, it depends, but it's kind of all the same. It's a boundary is, this is what we expect of you. If you do it, great. If you don't do it, then there's going to be a different boundary or a different consequence or something else that has to happen. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, maybe boundaries are set to bring self-respect, and rules are to just enforce.
To kind of lord it over somebody?
Well, yeah, just,
Yeah.
you know, lord it over them, I guess.
Yeah. So a rule, so you're saying that a rule is like, you do what I say or else.
Yeah, it's a standard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably more correct about a rule. An expectation is what's happening is not okay and it needs to change.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you.
I think it's around semantics, but it's also around intention. Like, is the person intending to be a bully, or, you know, somebody who you just absolutely have to do it my way or the highway? That would be more like a rule. A boundary and expectation is, this doesn't fit for me, it's not okay. I have the right to tell you that.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And so what about Sue?
All I can say is that I have not received an email from in any of our email inboxes.
Right.
And I have nothing in the chat from Sue that I can see. So Sue, if you want to, please put a message.
If you're still here, yeah. Or just unmute yourself and ask your question. If you're still here, I'm looking for her and I don't see her. So we have time for one more. Going once. Going twice.
Okay, hearing from no one at this point, I'm going to suggest that I want to say thank you all for attending. Next week, Candace is doing another webinar, the final one for 2020. It's on helping versus enabling. So in a sense, it's all part of a continuation of what she's been talking about already, but there will be more specific strategies and ways of dealing with things. Please do feel free to come with prepared questions, and also feel free to ask questions spontaneously. I will be sending you out the audio recording. So we don't share the video recording because that would break your anonymity. And we want to, client confidentiality is very important to us as a team. So we have the video just because that's how this, this platform works, but we don't share it out. What we share is the audio recording. So I look for, you'll have the link tomorrow, pardon me, the email tomorrow with the link to this recording, the last 2 recordings, as well as to the, where you can get the Self-Respect Sunday new book
On Amazon, yep.
that Candace has got, as well as a link to the questionnaire on our website. If you have questions around how you can help yourself and help your loved ones, then we encourage you to engage with us. This is our mission, is to help people come out of the pain of addiction. And the fact
And to stay out of the pain of addiction. Come out of it, stay out of it.
And we look forward to being able to help anybody who wants or needs that help in any way, whether it's short term or longer term, whether it's just you or it's your whole family, any kind of combination. We have ways of working with you, and we want you to live a better life and have more joy. So thank you all very much. And,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
and we're getting, yes, tomorrow, when I send out the email tomorrow, yes, I will be including the link so you can register for next week's webinar as well. So thank you all very much. And,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Candace. Thanks,
Thank
Sam.
you.
Good job.
Thanks.
so thank yous.
Thank you.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you, Candace.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Week.